welcome to the Explainer. So today we're doing something a little different. We're not digging into some academic paper or a peer-reviewed study. Nope, we're getting our hands dirty with something much, much more raw. A collection of unfiltered notes, one person's attempt to build a worldview from the ground up.
And this is where it all begins. Not with some grand theory, but with this. A simple, brutal admission of paralysis. It's the sound of a mind that's just stuck, overwhelmed. And this feeling is the catalyst for everything that follows.
So, what we're going to do here is follow this train of thought. We'll trace how this mind goes from this state of deep internal crisis to looking outward and trying to diagnose the entire world, and then finally, how it lands on a very, very stark conclusion. It's a fascinating, if pretty bleak, roadmap.
All right, so first section. We need to understand this feeling of being overwhelmed. What's actually behind that statement, cannot think? Well, the text gives us some pretty clear and pretty personal starting points. And wow, it's a heavy list, isn't it? A classic brutal combination. We're talking depression, alcoholism, broken relationships, and the crushing weight of debt. These aren't just abstract ideas. This is the real, tangible stuff that creates that feeling of paralysis and kicks off this entire analysis of, well, everything. And this is where things get really interesting. From that very personal crisis, the perspective just zooms way, way out. The author stops looking inward and starts trying to deconstruct the big external systems they see running the show. How does the world actually work? How is power really maintained? And this right here is the central question. Notice it's not about giving people a real chance. It's about making them think they have one. In this worldview, control isn't about brute force. It's about sophisticated psychological manipulation. And here's the supposed playbook for how it's done. A cynical four-step plan. First, you make big promises. Second, you create powerful imagery that makes those promises feel real and attainable. Third, and this is key, you control the flow of information. And finally, you misdirect everyone, get them arguing about tribal politics or money, so they don't notice what's really going on. So, after tackling these huge societal structures, the author brings that same critical, deconstructive lens to something much more personal, the dynamics between men and women.
Now this gets pretty intense. The text lays out what it sees as the core psychological vulnerabilities, broken down by gender. To break a man, you attack his sense of adequacy, physically, socially, and emotionally. For a woman, the supposed weak points are her morality, her beauty, and her social identity. It's a pretty weaponized view of human connection.
And the analysis goes even deeper, listing things framed as uniquely female shortcomings. Normal human functions, sweating, crying, breaking down, are recontextualized here as points of weakness, as things to be ashamed of. It is a harsh, unforgiving perspective. Okay, so we've seen a critique of society and a critique of relationships. The next big pillar of modern life to get torn down is work. And the view here is that a lot of jobs aren't just unfulfilling, they're actively destructive to the human spirit. The author coins this absolutely brilliant phrase, important useless jobs. It just perfectly captures that paradox, doesn't it? These are roles our society cannot function without, yet they seem to just grind down the very people who do them. And just look at this list. It's the backbone of society, right? Teachers, nurses, cops, chefs, doctors. These are the frontline workers, the people who deal with the public and all of its problems day in and day out. And here's the core complaint. Despite the massive importance of these jobs, the people doing them are made to feel worthless. There's a profound sense that they are treated, as the author puts it, like garbage. This really gets to the heart of why these jobs steal the soul. It's because you're required to be an emotional shock absorber. You spend your days just taking in the trauma, the negativity, and the frustrations of every single person you interact with. This slide just sums it all up perfectly. There's this massive canyon between the noble idea of the job, the title, and the brutal reality of what it's actually like. And according to this worldview, it's in that gap that people lose themselves. So, where does all this lead? I mean, after you've diagnosed a world built on control, broken relationships, and soul-crushing work, what's the answer? What's the prescription? Well, the text has a very clear one.
And the answer is a great withdrawal, a systematic rejection of pretty much every conventional social bond you can think of. Marriage, kids, going out, being part of a group, all of it is just tossed aside as no longer interesting or worthwhile.
And this is the philosophy that replaces all that discarded stuff. It's a call for radical, uncompromising individualism. The belief is that following the crowd makes you lose your identity, and the only way to find it is to break away completely and get lost on your own terms.
And there is zero ambiguity here. The whole idea of collective unity, the very concept of we, is dismissed in the bluntest way possible. It's not seen as a source of strength, but as a dangerous illusion.
Which brings us to this, the final, unshakable pillar of this entire worldview. This is the ultimate conclusion drawn from everything we've seen. Loneliness isn't something to be afraid of. It's just the fundamental, unchangeable truth of being human.
So we end here with this question. After tracing this whole journey from personal paralysis to a philosophy of total isolation, you have to wonder, is this cynical retreat just one person's response to trauma? Or, in a world that feels increasingly overwhelming, is this becoming an understandable, maybe even a logical conclusion for more and more people? Something to think about.